Having car problems? Well, with Rhoda, getting them fixed is as easy as ordering takeout. They'll come pick up your car for free, do any repair or maintenance needed, and return it right to your driveway. They'll even give you a complimentary video inspection of your car so you can see what needs to be done. Perfect for those of us that maybe aren't so car savvy. Book your appointment online at roda.com. And lucky for you, CityCast listeners get a 20% discount on any service for up to $100 off. Just use the code CityCast20.
Today on CityCast DC, for the last few years, Washington Gas has had a scheme to replace its pipes all over DC. This is being done in the name of public safety. So what could be wrong with that? Well, according to the people behind Stop Project Pipes, plenty could be wrong with that. They say the real plan is to keep DC dependent on a fuel that city leaders have vowed to move away from. Are they right? City Paper's Alex Koma has been covering the issue, and he's here to explain. Today is Thursday, October 17th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Alex.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. So listen, man, I keep seeing these signs around town that say Stop Project Pipes. Can you just tell me, what is Project Pipes and why do people think it should be stopped?
Yeah, so Project Pipes is, well, it's been going on for quite some time now. I think we're past a decade. Basically, Washington Gas, the district's natural gas utility monopoly, has said, listen, these pipes have been in the ground for a very long time. Many of them are leaking methane, which is not something you want, leading to some quite dangerous situations. And so they are saying, asking DC regulators to sort of give them permission to, charge their customers a little bit more to replace many of these pipes. And they've been doing that very steadily. This is a 3-phase project. It's cost well over $1 billion at this point, and they have done quite a bit of it. The problem is that they keep asking, for more and more, the chance to replace more and more of their gas infrastructure. And that has angered people in the environmental community who are saying, wait a minute, this is a type of fuel we're supposed to be moving away from. Why are you entrenching it under the ground and sort of locking us in to the use of a, fossil fuel, heavy fuel?
Fixing pipes seems like a pretty good and responsible thing to do. Are they saying that these pipes don't need fixing?
Well, that's the thing is, on the one hand, you have to be realistic. We're not even in the climate goals best scenario going to transition away from, this use of this fuel tomorrow. So in that case, yes, it's a safety issue. It's leading to, hazardous leaks, explosions. There have been many documented cases of this being quite bad. However, you're also sort of grappling with the fact that Washington Gas is using this as a chance to not only repair leaking pipes, but to repair, and replace all of its infrastructure throughout the city to essentially be ready for the next generation of the use of natural gas, which is, of course, something that climate advocates are, I think, very reasonably raising some big concerns about.
So their problem is not with the pipes, it's with the gas.
Yeah, and I mean, they go hand in hand because essentially what Washington Gas is saying is that we need to be realistic. At some point, you really need to acknowledge the reality that, this is going to be used for some time in the future, even as they try and transfer away from the use of this fuel. But this is it's a mixture of truth and rhetoric because it's very important to them in their business model to still be using, the types of fuels that they're accustomed to. It is not it's been quite expensive for them to start transitioning to other forms of energy. They've taken very halting steps to do so under a great deal of pressure from the city government and advocates. But the real question behind Project Pipes is, where is our energy in DC going to come from for the next generation? And what DC regulators are saying to Washington Gas is, yes, we don't want your pipes to be blowing up people's homes, but we also want you to be thinking about a future where your product isn't the only source of, say, heat or the material you need to, burn fuel for your stove. So that's a difficult debate, and it's why things have gotten so contentious.
Basically what they want, maybe not tomorrow, but over some time, is to get rid of natural gas as the thing you use to heat your house or cook your food. Is that like a generally agreed upon environmental goal nationally, or is this like a niche thing, like people who think artificial turf's going to kill you, stuff like that?
No, not at all. It's not as if electrifying everything is going to be perfect because, of course, the things that generate electricity are often reliant upon coal, fossil fuel burning activities, right? But the generally accepted line of thinking is that at least electrification can come from renewable sources, right? We're expanding our use of solar power in the city. We're forcing our electric utility, Pepco, to buy more and more of its energy from wind, solar, hydro sources. So they'll throw out alternatives. They'll say, well, we're working on renewable natural gas, which is sort of an oxymoron if I've ever heard one. It's a dirty form of energy. It's bad for the environment. We know that. We know that if we are going to meet our climate goals, natural gas fundamentally can't be a major part of the solution. And the problem is, as I described, we are so dependent upon it currently. We are so locked in. The question becomes, how much more locked in will we become?
You've cited our climate goals a couple of times. What does that mean? I mean, are there legally mandated goals for the District of Columbia, or is this just like individual desires?
I mean, among the city government's other failings, they have long been a leader when it comes to, reducing emissions. So in 2018, the council with the mayor passed a very substantial, generally considered a national leader, really, in environmental regulation, laying out these targets and laying out a variety of ways to get there, normally focused on reducing building emissions, on changing standards for all sorts of things that are meant to gradually move the city in this direction. But of course, the challenge is, as ever, finding the political will to actually put those targets and those standards into practice.
Well, that's not the only challenge. I mean, there's this other thing, which is that every time we talk about housing on our pod, we had the DC council member Robert White on a little while ago, and people will declare up and down that the single biggest priority of the city, the single biggest crisis of the city, is affordability. For the most part, natural gas is cheaper than electric for heating your house or cooking your food. I mean, these environmental goals, as well as the more urgent and loudly stated desire of the people on Stop Project Pipes, one of the effects of that is going to be people's utilities going up at a time when a lot of people have trouble living here. Is this sort of contradiction, or this trade-off, part of the conversation about this?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, this is the challenge that has bedeviled the climate movement throughout the country. So it's not unique to DC. But specifically, what DC has tried to do is develop enough programs for low-income residents and homeowners that, it's making it easier to switch over to solar power, to switch over to electric appliances. That was a major piece of legislation that just passed the council called the Healthy Homes Act that I expect we'll get to in a minute, because the question of how that gets funded and who deserves the funding that could go towards this project is really contested at this moment. But, that is essentially the goal, right? Is recognizing that this is going to hit people at the lower end of the income spectrum harder. And so the city should devote some of its funding into helping them retrofit their homes, making them more energy efficient so that they are saving money and addressing the climate.
But DC's also losing or, worried about people whose, on income alone are not at the low end of the spectrum, but they're still price sensitive. And so they look at the rents, mortgages in DC, these things add up. People aren't ignorant of it, but like all things, there's trade-offs, right? You can be more focused on your climate goals, but at the cost of it being more expensive. Is that a part of this debate?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it is certainly, often used by the utility companies in particular to sort of justify what they want to do. But, at the end of the day, there are ways to be creative about doing this and save people money. I mean, so there's the lowest income, which we just discussed. But then, as you say, there's people who are in the middle. Maybe they're, homeowners, they're doing okay, but they're nervous about these costs. Well, the city has, again, been a leader in helping people employ solar power. I mean, you have to invest a little bit of upfront money, but it can save you quite a bit of money in the long run because you're able to generate more energy than you use, and you can sell that power back to the electric grid. And there are programs in the city that will, finance the initial infrastructure investment. You can use those that money you're making selling the power to the grid to sort of pay essentially the mortgage on your solar panels. There's all sorts of things the city can do where this makes sense and saves people money. You just are often confronted with the resistance from the big incumbents in the market that don't want to see things change.
So you're saying I'm a shill for the utility industry?
I would never.
DC voters, I'm Lisa Rice, native Washingtonian, proposer of Ballot Initiative 83. Let's make politicians work harder with 2 changes to our system. 1, let independents like me vote in taxpayer-funded primary elections. And 2, implement ranked choice voting to vote for your favorite candidate and rank your backup choices. Candidates need over 50% to win. Flip your ballot and vote yes on 83. Paid for by Make All Votes Count DC, Philip Pinnell, Treasurer.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Can I just, I don't think I know this, that Washington Gas, as you note, it's the gas monopoly utility. Is it owned by the city, or like what is its legal status vis-a-vis the city that allows it to have a monopoly?
Yeah, it's like a lot of electric, natural gas companies, throughout the country. Basically, so it's a privately held company. In fact, it was just purchased by a big Canadian natural gas company, AltaGas. So they are now, one part. They used to be a lot smaller, and much like Pepco, they are now part of a much larger conglomerate.
So the Canadians could cut off our heat if they get mad.
That's true. You better be nice to our friends in the Maple Leaf country. Basically, the idea is these places can operate as monopolies with the agreement, the assent of the local government, which is able to regulate how much money, how they can make in profits by, every time they want to change the rates that they charge for your gas or your electric, they have to go to the city and ask for that. And they can say, well, you can make this amount of money. You're allowed to charge customers this amount of money in order to do the sort of infrastructure upgrades that we're discussing. So the idea being that, they're allowed to operate without the competition because, practically it's hard to have competition with this sort of product, but they should be under more scrutiny than normal. Of course, whether that works in practice is very much an open question.
So I asked that because I'm curious what the city government's reaction to Project Pipes has been. I mean, if it's been going on for 10 years, it sounds to me like their reaction was pretty friendly until some advocates started raising the issue and forcing people's attention.
Yeah, it's certainly, that's the biggest part of what has drawn attention to this recently is that, you're right, the Public Service Commission, which is a 3-member body, they deal with very technical stuff, all of the, determining what rates they can charge, the numbers will make your head hurt. Their responsibility is to, be looking over what these utility companies are doing, and they have historically pretty much gone along with what they've wanted. Where this has changed is in the last, call it 2 years or so, they have certainly been taking a more skeptical eye. That's not to say that they have stopped Washington Gas from spending any money on Project Pipes, but basically when they came to the Public Service Commission and asked them for, I think it was something like $672 million worth of spending over the next 5 years, the PSC, rather than just waving that through, said, hold on, you are not striking the right balance between replacing the pipes that are, actually a hazard to people right now, and replacing all pipes that will lock us into using, your energy for the foreseeable future. So what they told them to do was to come back, sort of scale their plan back, strike more of that balance, and submit something new. And that is what has just happened within the last few weeks. They have said, okay, this is our smaller plan. It is, in fact, we're calling it Project Pipes, but technically it is no longer that. It has been rebranded to DC Safe, but it will cost about $215 million over 3 years. Basically, Washington Gas, this is their attempt to get this through, to strike more of that balance. And now we're waiting to see whether the Public Service Commission will find that acceptable or not.
What I don't get is, okay, if DC has some publicly voted on, stated, agreed upon climate goals that, such and such percentage of our power will come from renewable sources by such and such year. Why will it make a difference one way or the other if Washington Gas puts new pipes in? I mean, if they want to be dumb enough to put new pipes in for a kind of energy that the city is going to legally move away from, it's kind of their business, right? Well, I don't get why people think that creates a lock-in when in fact there's laws to the contrary.
Well, it's not just their business, it's all of our business, if you're a Washington Gas customer at least, because they're charging DC customers for, all of this money. It's the PSC's job to say, they're looking out for the public. And so they're saying, why are you installing? And it's sort of a path dependency question too, right? If you install the pipes for the fuel, you therefore must use the fuel to justify the money that you charged your customers for. So it's the idea being A, protecting costs for consumers, and B, breaking this cycle and forcing them to do something different.
I would suspect that the great majority of people don't know what Project Pipes is, either for good or for bad. Is there, on the advocate side, I imagine they would probably have to undercut this notion of wow, these crazy advocates are trying to make me get rid of my oven. And on the Washington Gas side, similarly, they might want to explain sort of what they're doing and why they are allegedly not in opposition to the city's stated goals.
Yeah, they have been able to successfully frame this fight as a monopolistic company that is looking out for its profits versus people who are concerned about, what is happening with the environment and with, your utility bills. At the end of the day, changes to utility bills are only ever a few dollars here and there when these, surpluses get on. But people resent the notion of being squeezed by the company that they have no choice but to pay for. And I think that has successfully driven this into the public conversation to the point where you saw 10 of the 13 members of the DC Council writing a letter about this, urging the PSC not to approve additional, the proposal for Project Pipes. And I think that's the sort of thing you just wouldn't see happening, but for the new public conversation about this that we've seen.
So you wrote recently with some contempt, I would say, if I may read tone into your writing, that Washington Gas is trying to get $2 million from this clean energy fund that the city has. What are they trying to get it for? Is it to fund Project Pipes? And is that even allowed?
Those are two different questions. So yes, I will say if you're detecting contempt, it's certainly because that is what a lot of people in the Wilson building and the environmental community are feeling towards what Washington Gas is trying to do here. Essentially, Washington Gas is saying, we would like some money, about $2 million, to study other types of energy that they could pursue. So that includes geothermal energy. It includes capturing heat from sewage. It includes, which I mentioned earlier, biomethane, renewable natural gas. They're saying, we want to meet the district climate goals. These are more renewable, emission reducing fuels that we can explore. So in that case, they say, well, if we're going to try and meet the city's climate goals, we should get some city money in order to do it. There's a city fund called the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund, and that is meant to fund all manner of things related to sustainable energy, as the name suggests, mainly many of the programs we discussed earlier, electrifying stoves for low-income residents, helping people install solar infrastructure, all manner of things, the financing mechanisms for that sort of thing. It's technical, but essentially what Washington Gas is seeking to do is pull money away from programs that would help people spend less money on their products by moving to other forms of energy in order to study things that we know don't reduce carbon emissions. I mean, the renewable natural gas has been, sort of promoted by industry as a solution, but environmentalists have pretty roundly condemned it as an answer. And in particular, Washington Gas is trying to take money from a fund that would fund that Healthy Homes Act, which is electrifying stoves, appliances for low-income people. And Washington Gas had been fighting that legislation tooth and nail. So it is kind of difficult to take them at their word that this is purely a well-intentioned decision on their part, given the other motivations at play. So how does this fit into Project Pipes? Essentially, they're asking for permission to study types of fuels that would go into the infrastructure that they're asking to build. So the way that environmentalists have put it to me is, this is all of a piece. They're looking for justification to want to keep building this infrastructure, to put renewable natural gas into these new pipes that they plan to build, when in reality, what they argue the city should be doing is moving away from this paradigm entirely and pursuing electrification.
But what do they propose that Washington Gas or any gas company does? You've been around, you're a company, you own such and such infrastructure, you have provided this service, and I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but they have ideas of other stuff they can put in the pipes they own. And, if I'm, a shareholder of that company, I'm going to think like, geez, these guys better figure something out because the world's going to move in the other direction from them. What are they supposed to be doing? Like, what would be a better thing for them to be doing right now?
Well, that's, of course, the tension, right? Is they are fundamentally just as, locked into the use of natural gas as the city is, by virtue of that being their business model. That is, where they are stuck.
No, but what I mean is that like they're trying to do something else, and people come along and say, well, you can't do that. You can't use our money to do that.
Well, that's the thing is advocates have said to me, geothermal energy, some of this, heat capture from sewage, these are good ideas that we could pursue. This is absolutely something that Washington Gas could do. But why do they need city money to do it when it is city money that is earmarked for other projects that they oppose?
So what you're saying is that sustainable trust fund, maybe it's not quite legally clear what exactly the money is supposed to be used for, but they're kind of stretching the interpretation of what people think it's for.
Well, that's another part of the story, too, is that, for the wonky lawyer types, I mean, they look at the DC code and they say, we see nothing in here that allows Washington Gas to spend the money this way. Nothing even in there that would allow the PSC to be the ones to approve them spending money, but that's who they've asked. So there's kind of a turf war over who can approve the spending of this money, and they feel kind of galled that Washington Gas is going around other agencies that would be, in charge of approving this. So there's a lot happening here.
So where do you see this going next? They have rebranded and apparently pulled back on some of these ambitions. But the basic tension between, a company that wants to stay in business and activists and a city that have embraced a policy of using much, much, much less of their product, that tension's not going to go anywhere.
Look, it's natural. The company is going to act in the best interests of the company, but it's the city's responsibility to act in the interest of the public and try and do what's best. So, in terms of next steps, we really are waiting on the Public Service Commission. They are going to have to review this new proposal. And there are big questions whether their skepticism that they've shown of, Project Pipes in previous iterations will really extend to them outright denying this application. Most people that I've spoken with are pretty skeptical that will happen. But they were also surprised when the PSC showed as much resistance to Washington Gas as they did in the first place. I mean, there's one commissioner in particular, Richard Beverly, who has been writing these scathing dissents about, what the utilities have been asking to do here. He seems to be exerting more influence on the rest of the commission, as do, frankly, the council members and the activists. So, we'll see. But I mean, you are quite right that at a time when the city's budget is not as robust as it used to be when many of these programs were first created and funded, this is going to get only uglier as things move forward.
Thank you for being here. Come back and tell us all about it.
It'll be my pleasure.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.